In this video, I'm going to give you my final picks for UFC 307. We're going to look at DraftKings, lineup construction. We also have some Underdog fantasy where you can get some free money. We'll talk about that later in the video. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. So we'll jump right into the DraftKings slate this week. At the time of recording this, we are post weigh-ins. Everybody's made weight. Everybody's happy. So there's no chance of us flying blind into this slate. We know exactly what we're going to get, and we'll start with value plays. These are going to be plays at 8,000 and below. Underdogs you're going to need in your lineups to make everything work salary wise. There are a couple that I like this week. But real quick, if you haven't already, go back and watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. Full card breakdown, different information covered in that video than this video. You're going to want both of them to go into this with all the tools. Maybe, depending on how the MMA gods look at us this week. But anyway, value plays starting right at the top of the range. We have $7,900 Roman Dolidze. Not a must play in my opinion when it comes to DraftKings. If you're playing like single entry contests and things like that, I would stay away from Roman Dolidze. But if you're playing larger field stuff, you want this guy as a part of your player pool. Why the distinction? Why would we want him to be X'd out at the single entry pool but not in the bigger pool? Well, I'll tell you why. Roman Dolidze can get it done for you, and he can get it done inside the distance, but he doesn't typically post really high DraftKings scores, and I think there's a good chance that in this fight, Kevin Holland will have success at different points. Roman Dolidze is very good on the ground, but he's not somebody who's dying to get the fight there. If you look at his last handful of fights, and his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights there on the screen, we go a little bit further as well. It's outside of that Staropoli fight, which Staropoli is not in the UFC anymore. He's only landed 1 takedown since then. So as far as the grappling upside goes, you have finishing upside if the fight hits the mat, because I think once they get down there, it'd be a wrap for Kevin Holland, but he doesn't really have takedown upside, or at least hasn't shown that in his last couple of fights. So to me, it feels pretty low percentage to expect him to go out there, get a takedown or two, finish this fight in the first or second round. Not impossible, but pretty low percentage. And I feel like there are safer spots for your single entry contest, but he's a very live dog because he's so much better on the mat than Kevin Holland. So somebody you might want in value play consideration in larger field stuff, but for smaller contests, single entry, or if you're not running that many lineups, Roman Dolidze not somebody you need to have, not by any means. Julianna Pena though, she's in the co-main event. She has 5 rounds to work. She has takedown upside. She's going to give you a hard 5 rounds as well. And Pena's a grinder, and she's been waiting for this opportunity. It's been a long time since we've seen her in competition, and I don't think there's going to be a ring rust issue because she's not really dealing with somebody who's going to put it on her and get her out of there early. And if you've watched this channel for a while, you know we got big respect for Raquel Pennington, more than most people probably do. Because online it's fun to bash women's MMA, but I'll tell you, women's MMA from a DFS perspective is probably kicking your ass all the time because you're either getting it wrong or not playing them, and that happens. But I feel like you can't sleep on this fight. You definitely can't sleep on the challenger here. She's going to get takedowns. She's going to throw a lot of strikes, and if we get some and new in this fight, I don't see a situation where Julianna Pena isn't in the optimal lineup at 7,800. If we continue down, I don't have a whole lot of interest in Jose Aldo, not only because I prefer the Mario Bautista side, but I also don't see him posting a really high score in a 3-round decision where he's not getting any takedowns. Marina Rodriguez might be able to give us some good work if Lucindo fades, if she gasses out here at elevation, but I think that's the only way Marina Rodriguez gets there. Austin Hubbard though, Thud Hubbard, my guy. I can see him having a lot of success this week. If you look at his last handful of fights, 3 takedowns last time out, 2 before that, 4 against Vince Pichel. It's what he wants to do. It's how he can win this fight because Alex Hernandez has been taken down before. Alex Hernandez is really just looking to strike for 3 rounds because if we look at Alex Hernandez's numbers and you watch the fights, he's not trying to get the fight to the ground all that often either. But Thud is going to commit to these takedowns, and I think that's going to be the real difference maker when it comes to DraftKings scoring. As you know, a nice 5 piece every time you get a takedown. You get those 5 points for the takedown. You get the control time. And one thing that I actually kind of like is that you look at the takedowns versus the control numbers. It's not great, but for DFS, that's kind of what we want. Some of the highest DraftKings scores you've ever seen are coming from fights where a guy is able to get to the clinch, get a quick takedown, his opponent gets back up to his feet, he trips him again, remats him, and they do that over and over again. Sometimes guys are able to rack up 2, 3, 4 takedowns inside a round. So it might seem counterintuitive, oh, he's good at taking people down, but he's not really good at keeping them there. I think that's important because if he is able to do that and get several takedowns here, maybe 4 or more, the chances of him eclipsing 100 DraftKings points, I think, get really high here because I do think he's going to land a lot of strikes as well. So Austin Hubbard, somebody I really like, definitely a single entry piece in my opinion. It's not an easy fight by any means because he's got a better athlete on the other side, but I do think that Austin Hubbard wins that fight, gets his takedowns, scores you a decent amount of points on DraftKings as well. And Carla Esparza, it's like watching Fran Drescher in The Nanny. It's just somebody you root for. And you root for because it's her last fight, and this is a pioneer of women's MMA. This is somebody who was fighting back in 2014. A former champion, a grinder, somebody who's going to be looking for takedowns as well. Like you look here, there aren't many fights that go by where Carla Esparza is not securing a takedown, even against the great Zhang Wei Li. And we talked about this earlier in the week. I think that Carla Esparza is giving it everything she's got this week, given that it's her last fight in the UFC. So I don't think she pulls any punches. I don't think that she waits. I don't think that she's hesitant. I think she gets after it right away. And Tecia Torres is kind of the same way. She gets after it right away as well. So I think that Carla Esparza goes in there, hunts for takedowns, secures a handful of them, and just does enough to win these rounds. Because that's the thing with Tecia Pennington. We wrote a little bit about this on the official betting article of the week on KunithMMA.com. You can find that in the description. Tecia Pennington tends to be in close fights, and not just her last two that went to split decision, didn't go her way, but even before that, she tends to be in close fights. Everybody in the building knows that it's going to be Carla Esparza's last fight. Carla Esparza is probably going to be securing takedowns sometime inside the last 90 seconds of the round. And really, that's all the judges are looking for. What are you doing in the last 90 seconds of the round? Because unless you're getting a knockdown or the person's bleeding before that, because again, sometimes it's the UFC or the UBC, the Ultimate Bleeding Championship. Oh, fighter A is bleeding, fighter A lost the round. So stupid, right? But that's how it is. But if that's not happening, no knockdowns, no bleeding, the person who wins the last 90 seconds or even just finds himself in top position for a decent chunk of that last 90 seconds is going to win the round. And I think Carla Esparza is way more likely to find herself in that dominant position late than Tecia Pennington is. So Carla Esparza can be very sneaky this week. Somebody who definitely won value play consideration, I think is a bit of a single entry play as well, because if she wins, it's because she's getting these takedowns. Nobody's playing her. Oh, Kunith, women's MMA, I don't like it. Eileen Perez broke the slate. And if we continue down, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, if this was a younger Stephen Thompson, I would be all about it. If this was Stephen Thompson with 5 rounds to work, I'd be all about it. But I'm not on Wonder Man this week. I'm sorry. Court McGee, not really. I could see Court grinding out a decision win here, but I'm not really interested. OSP, no way. If you played OSP last time out and it wasn't because you just bumped up the allocation in your lineup optimizer, if you just played OSP like in a single entry, you're a mad scientist. But that's not the lane that we're going to be in this week. However, I do think we can dial up some strange by playing Ihor Potieria. $6,800, and let me tell you something, Junior. I'm not a Cesar Almeida believer, and I think Potieria at 185 pounds could make some noise in the division. Now, if you look at his last fight against Michel Pereira, gets the doors blown off him, gets submitted instantly. I don't really care about that because Michel Pereira is a problem at 185 pounds as well. But this guy, he has that thing, got some swag. He's one of those guys that once he gets into a rhythm, he's going to be hard to deal with. I also think he's somebody who, if he has his opponent in front of him and his opponent is not as fresh as he is, he's going to put it on you. He's going to style on you. We saw that against Robert Breachcheck. I have a sneaking suspicion that Cesar Almeida gasses here at elevation at 36 years old, being a one-dimensional kickboxer. What Potieria has going for him is he can crack. Right? In 6 UFC fights, he has 3 knockdowns. He's been finished in all of his UFC fights, but these finishes are coming up at 205 pounds, one of which is happening against Carlos Ulberg. I could watch Carlos Ulberg fight a Poatan in a couple of months. So I don't really fault him for those losses, and I feel like he has been getting better as time goes on. If this fight hits the mat on his terms, well, it would only be on his terms because you're fighting a guy that won't try to take him down. If this fight hits the mat, I think he snatches something up. I think he could win this fight by submission and surprise a lot of people. I think his skill set might not be as clean and as crisp and as technical early on when they're at striking range, but I think Potieria could end up getting it done this week at 6,800. Absolutely breaks the slate because he does it inside the distance. So those are really the value plays for me this week on the 12 fight card. I've got 5 of them that I like. Really, I don't love Roman Dolidze, so for the ones that I'm pretty high on, just these 4. 2 of them are women's MMA. Put that in your juice box and suck it. Oscar, I don't know what you've been writing in the script lately, but I don't like that one. But now we can use these plays to start building some lineups. If you don't mind, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment for the algorithm, all that good stuff. We'll start with a cash game lineup. What is the cash game lineup this week? I'll tell you. You're definitely going to want to stack the 5-round fight in the co-main event. Now, not the main event, because the main event probably ends inside the first or second round. It's favored to go under 1.5 rounds, I believe. But the co-main event spot with Raquel Pennington, who probably gets a takedown or two here and lands a lot of strikes. Pena on the other side, you could say a lot of the same thing. You're definitely going to want to stack this fight. You can honestly probably get away with stacking this fight in a single entry contest. You limit your upside, but you're different. You guarantee yourself a winner because one of these fighters is going to win. 84.50 left over per fighter because the math always shakes out the same. At this point, I'm probably going to stick in this mid-range. I might go with Mario Bautista, who I like this week. Gonna have to grab a punt play down here, somebody who's cheap, probably somebody who doesn't get finished. I think Court McGee makes for a great cash game punt this week at 7,200. If you wanted a little bit more possible upside, you could swap him out with Potieria, but I feel Potieria is more of a tournament play than a cash play. Over 9,050 left over per fighter, so if you wanted to, you can grab somebody like Lucindo, and you can come all the way up here to Ryan Superman Span at 9,200. You've left 300 salary on the table, but you have early finishing upside with Span. You've got Lucindo, who's 15 years younger, grappling edge. Marina Rodriguez has been sliding a bit, let's say. Court McGee is your punt play over Tim Means, and I don't think he's completely outgunned in that fight. Mario Bautista, I like him over Jose Aldo this week. And then you have a guaranteed winner at the top. You want to plug that into your cash games, go for it. If you have some different ideas for your cash games and you want to send me what they look like on Twitter, I will respond to that. There's been a time where I stopped responding to what your tournament lineups can be, but if it's just your cash game lineups, I'd be happy to give you my 2 cents. Send me the DM on Twitter at MMA if you want, and I'll take a look at your cash game lineups. And real quick, before we build some tournament lineups, might I interest you in an obligatory website plug? KunithMMA.com, linked in the description and in a pinned comment. You can go there, get the official betting article for the week. You can get the DFS strategy guide, lineup optimizer, data model, and projections, as well as access to the community forum. And I assume we're going to get a clean sweep this week, so you're going to want to be in there to make sure you see how it's structured, just in case one or two of these fighters decides to screw me over. Because if they do, and we have the right structure, we'll be okay. But all of that can be found on the website, KunithMMA.com, linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Back to the breakdown. Now for your tournaments this week, if you want to come right up here and pay for Kayla Harrison at 9,800, I'm not mad at you. I think there's enough live dogs to make her work in a lineup. If we just built one around her real quick, we could see what that might look like. But Kayla Harrison last time out against Holly Holm looked like a destroyer. 113 DraftKings points. If she hits that kind of ceiling this week, she probably ends up on the optimal lineup. I worry a bit. If a case has to be made for Ketlen Vieira on the other side, she's very hard to put away. She's got decent enough takedown defense, although she probably hasn't been dealing with grapplers or wrestlers even in training of this caliber, but still, historically, very good takedown defense. She's got good experience in the UFC. Kayla Harrison weighed in at 136 pounds, which that's a minor detail that might have major importance because from what I understand, although I don't follow it as closely as some people do, Kayla Harrison's supposed to be the alternate for the main event. So let's say Julianna Pena decides, oh, I made weight, let me go to Wingstop. Oh, I get food poisoning, I can't fight anymore. Kayla Harrison's supposed to step in and fight for the title, but because she weighed in at 136 pounds, she can't win the title even if that were the case, even if she were to slide into the main event spot, or the co-main event spot, excuse me. Even if there was an outside chance for you to fight for the championship tomorrow night, don't you think you would weigh in at 135? But we know that this is not an easy weight cut for Kayla Harrison to make. 135 pounds, bantamweight limit is 136, which she weighed in at. It's not easy for her to make. So I do feel like at elevation, we might see a situation where she kind of gasses out going into the third round. You can't really confidently say that she's that much better of a striker than Ketlen Vieira because her whole game is predicated on her judo, on her grappling. So if she goes out there and she's trying so hard to get takedowns and that weight cut's weighing on her, we might see her slow down quite a bit and go into fight manager mode. And if she were to win a decision here and only secure 1 or 2 takedowns, say early in this fight, and not get her out of there, she might score 80 DraftKings points. So it's a little scary to me. I'll still build the lineup with her, but if you had to make the case against her, that's the case. Now, if we build the rest of this lineup, let's say you come down here, start plugging in some of the value plays. Potieria at 6,800. come right here, grab Thud. 8,600 left over per fighter. Wouldn't be mad at you to come here to Mario Bautista. You can come up here to Lucindo. You've got 8,700 left over. That can get you up to, don't love Pennington. I have the other side of this matchup. At this point, you probably want to grab somebody like, I don't love Pennington here. If anything, I would just prefer to grab the other side in Julianna Pena. You have 3 women's MMA fights here. You don't have a piece of the main event. You're getting very, very different. Scary, but different. Now, if we blow that up, let's see what else we have. Alex Pereira at 9,600. We talked about this earlier in the week, not with the salary on DraftKings, but just the betting line. Poetan's never been this big of a favorite. Even in his UFC debut, where he was a decent favorite, 9,100. Outside of that, you see him in the 8K range. He was an underdog a few times, back in that 8K range. Now he's 9,600. So you're really paying a premium for Poetan this week. And paying a premium for Poetan is positively putrid. We could take a look at this and understand that prior planning prevents poor performance. We can plan here by looking at the history. He doesn't really score that well if the fight goes beyond the first round, or if he doesn't get multiple knockdowns, right? So you got this first round finish over Jamal Hill, 110, excellent. If he does that this week, he's probably getting you there. 107, I think it starts to get a little sus. You might be a point or two away from where you need to be at this price. Anything less than that, you're not getting there. Now, if he comes in at, say, 45 to 55% ownership, somewhere in that range at 9,600, he's an easy fade for me this week. And I've already picked him to win. I pick him to win by knockout. I stand by that. I think he does that, and I would not be surprised if he does it early. But a chalky, expensive striker who's probably not going to be looking for takedowns here, not somewhere I want to be really this week, like in single entry and stuff like that. Big field, of course. You know, let's say he gets a knockdown, Khalil drops to his butt, gets right back up, knocks him down again, does that in the first round, scores 122 DraftKings points. You needed him. But he does scare me a little bit, and I think you can get just as much upside at 9,200 for a fraction of the ownership by playing Ryan Spann. I feel like he has more ways to win. Club and sub is on the table for him. He's got a lesser opponent in front of him than what Pereira is going to be dealing with this week. So I think $9,200 Ryan Spann, a little $400 discount off of the champion. I love that. And if we were to build around him this week, let's say you went with somebody like Thud. Let's say you came here to Esparza, 85.66 left over. Let's say I went back to Potieria because he opens up so many things salary-wise for me. 94.50 left over per fighter. At this point, I might grab Lucindo, and then I have 10.3 left over. At that point, it's kind of hard to pass up playing Kayla Harrison at 9,800 since you have the salary. Now, if you're playing some larger field stuff and you want to go with the other side of the main event and Khalil Rountree Jr., I'm not mad at you. We have seen him post decent scores in the past, even though he's not taking people down. He's got 5 rounds to work this week, although I don't think that makes a huge difference for the type of fight that we're going to get between those two. He's going to pull a decent amount of ownership. I'm expecting around 20-ish, maybe 22, 23%, but you should have some Khalil Rountree Jr. exposure in my opinion. Now let's say you went with Julianna Pena, 8,900 left over. That's when you can come up here and start playing with some of these favorites. Mario Bautista, let's say you went with Buckley here at 8,800 for that knockout upside, although buyer beware on Buckley, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm like, oh, don't play anybody, but I don't love Buckley this week, and I just try to tell you the plays that I like. Tim Means might surprise you with a finish. Then you got Ryan Spann there, 9,200. You've left 100 salary on the table, so you didn't leave too much, but still different enough in my opinion. Let's blow that up. I'll give you one more look. Say you really wanted to play Pereira. You got 9,600 there. Let's say you came down here to Esparza. Let's say you played Potieria. Let's say you came up here, you played Bautista. And I know I'm plugging Mario Bautista in a lot, but the kid's got something. Just kidding, can't call him a kid because he's older than me. At 8,800 left over per fighter, this is where you could get really different by playing somebody like Julianna Pena, and then you can come up here and grab a Joaquin Buckley. You've left 1,000 salary on the table. This is extremely different. And if you want to go a step further, if you believe in Jose Aldo and you don't want to play Mario Bautista because of it, you can come right here to Ryan Spann, or you can come down here and grab another value play that we talked about before, which is really only one left. So let's say instead you play Dolidze, right? Let's say you're playing large field stuff. You left 1,600 salary on the table. I don't hate that at all. It's very different. But with 12 fights on the slate, there's plenty of ways for you to get different. It's not like last week where we had 14 and tons of live underdogs, but they're fighting at elevation. Weird stuff happens in Salt Lake City, right? So don't be afraid to get different. Don't be afraid to try new things when you're building your lineups. If you've been losing for the last couple of weeks, Try something completely different, because what's going to happen if you do and you lose again? You just lost again. Up with Underdog Fantasy, I'm going to show you my Underdog Fantasy slip this week. I have 5 picks going out. A lot of this is largely based off of the projections that we build throughout the week. I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. This is what the Underdog Fantasy slip of the week looks like. I have Tim Means going higher than 59.5 significant strikes. I have higher than a finish for Ryan Spann. I like the higher on significant strike count for both Austin Hubbard and Carla Esparza as well. The only lower that I have is fight time in the main event under 8 minutes. I think that hits. But Underdog Fantasy, partner of the channel, use promo code KUNATH, that's KUNATH, or use the link in the description or in a pinned comment, and they will match your first deposit up to $250. There's bonus bets all the time. Just even now, if you are already a customer, you can go on there, you could deposit, and they will bonus match your deposit, I think 25%. So let's say you put 100 in, they're going to give you $25 in bonus play, even if you're an existing customer, which is awesome, because a lot of sites, once you're in the door, they're like, all right, I don't care about you anymore. It's all about the new. It's all about the new clients, but they still show you love. They're constantly giving you out free squares like Patrick Mahomes to have over a half a yard, stuff like that. So Underdog Fantasy, love the channel, love the promotion, love what we have with them. And if you want to get in on some of that action, use the link in the description or promo code KUNATH, that's KUNATH for those of you that can't read. That'll do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. I wish you the best of luck at UFC 307, and I will see you next week.